So I'm going to talk about the linkage of grassland-dependent species, including pollinators and migratory birds. I'm not going to talk about pollinators all that much, but I'll mention them a little bit. I'm the Oaks and Prairies Joint Venture Coordinator. We've heard of joint venture from the Monarch Joint Venture. There's 18 bird habitat joint ventures within the United States that cover the whole United States. The Oaks and Prairies is just one of them, one of 5 in Texas and 4 in Oklahoma. We have the Oaks and Prairies Bird Conservation Region, which is basically San Antonio all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then the Edwards Plateau in our area. So that's where I've been working and lines up nicely with monarchs, and what I'm going to talk about is other parts of the bird conservation world that line up nicely with monarchs. So which button do I press? The big green one. So we've seen this several times, the decline of monarch populations, and then same thing with pollinators, bee populations declining. But also, what I look at a lot are the bird populations, and this is based on breeding bird survey data that's citizen science that started in 1966 to collect information across the United States on bird populations. And these are 4 birds that are in the Oaks and Prairies region that we're sitting in the middle of, 4 very common birds, all of them showing pretty good declines in their populations. And if you calculate it out since 1966, how much they've declined, northern bobwhite declined by 97% since 1966. And the recent calculations have figured out that they calculated a half-life for the population as a measure of urgency, and found that range-wide, the northern bobwhite is going to lose another half of its population in 10 years. And in the Oaks and Prairies, it's 7 years. So we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of conservation, but we're doing the best we can, and we're ramping up our efforts, which I'll talk about later. The other part of monarchs, migration is an important issue, and we've seen this map a lot. I brought a few of the newer maps for some of the migratory birds. This is dickcissels, who winter in northern South America, and you can see across the bottom, it's moving across the different dates. This is from eBird Data, another citizen science project that brings in lots of cool information now where we can figure out not only where we want to do conservation, but when we need to provide the habitat. And one of the things you can see with the dickcissels, they really don't like the Edwards Plateau. And then this is painted bunting, another one of our, actually in this area, one of our most common birds that are counted on the breeding bird survey. Come in and then leave. Winter in Central America. So same funneling effect as monarchs. And then this one is called the mesmerizing migration, if you want to look it up. This is, I put the circle in to show how Texas is a funnel for migratory birds, not only from Mexico, but from South America. And you could watch this for hours. So to convince my bird friends that we should be talking about monarchs a couple of years ago, I put together a couple of tables to show when our priority birds are coming through for migratory birds and resident birds during the winter and during the breeding season. The boxes on here indicate the nesting seasons for these birds, and I tried to have monarchs lay eggs, so nesting season for monarchs. Probably needs some modification now with the 5th generation monarchs too. I could use some help with that, but it shows how the bird timing lines up pretty well with the monarch timing. And then I looked at generalized habitats for these birds. When I talk about grassland birds, I'm talking about birds that use everything from bare ground to next to the forest, so shrublands, savannas, everything. And you could see the monarch on the top there and how it lines up with all of our other priority species and doesn't line up with some of the priority species that we're looking at. So to convince our bird friends, this is what I put together, and if you have any opinions on this, I'm happy to talk to you about it. The one nice thing about these species is they do respond quickly to land management. These are some of the projects that we've been able to put together over the past couple of years with a program that we have, doing prescribed burning and brush clearing. And what we're trying to do is make habitat go from this side over here back to native conditions, either native grasslands or savannas, open it up to savannas. And we know which side of the fence we want to be on. So the joint venture itself is a partnership of agencies and organizations and individuals who work together to advance bird conservation for wildlife benefits in general. And all of these organizations have been working together for about 10 years to put together plans to implement conservation on the ground in this region. And we put together a couple years ago a grassland bird conservation plan, business plan. I'm a trained biologist, and I'm learning how to write a business plan, and had to put strategies together. And our first strategy is to provide financial incentives through the Oaks and Prairies Grassland Restoration Incentive Program, or GRIP. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now, and then later on in the 3-minute talks in the afternoon. We also have strategies to support local landowner cooperative efforts through science and education, develop market-based conservation delivery strategies like Audubon's bird-friendly beef program is part of that strategy, and then implementing strategic communications. We have to communicate about everything we do to all different audiences, and it takes a plan to figure out who's going to hear what. So the one flagship program that we have right now is the Grassland Restoration Incentive Program, which we started in 2013. This took about 7 years to put together. We pay landowners incentive payments, like we just heard about, to do beneficial practices on the ground for conservation of grassland species, including the grassland birds, but also monarchs more recently. And I'm just going to talk about the accomplishments now. I'll talk about the program later, but since 2013, we've had over 40 partner organizations put about $1 million worth of financial assistance on the ground in parallel with the Farm Bill programs that we hear about, the EQIP program and stuff, through local non-governmental organizations. Over 100 conservation programs, 60,000 acres of grassland conservation practices supported by the science that we're doing grassland bird counts, 12,000 of them. We have a crew of 8 out right now in Texas and Oklahoma counting birds. And it's all supported by a whole bunch of diverse sources. So my job has turned into writing grants, starting with the Upland Game Bird Stamp Fund. We have local quail coalition chapters that put money together, Monarch Conservation Grant through NIFWIF, 2 ConocoPhillips Spirit of Conservation Awards. So we're mixing quail money with grassland bird money, with monarch money, with corporate money, all to put conservation on the ground on private lands. And then I always want to end with a bird. Can anyone see the nest in that grassland? You got your monarchs, I got my baby birds.